I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a time for an invitation for a citizen to schedule a time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Do we have anyone that would like to be put on the agenda? And the minute should show that there were none. Next, we'll look at the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda?
Once we get into the next portion, the consent agenda, I do have one change, a corrected personnel action notice that I can discuss further when we get to that place and then point, and then we also are going to discuss a travel request. But other than that, I don't have any other changes or additions.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 The agenda is approved. Moving on to the consent agenda, did you have some items you wanted to remove, Stacy?
The first is the personnel action notice for Brianna Palomaki. It had an incorrect salary amount, so I passed out in front of you this morning on at your spots was a corrected personnel action notice. So that is the correct amount, just to note that. So what was in the packet was incorrect. That's all I have on that. And then Commissioner Pierce had asked me to submit a travel request for an event that's coming up at the end of the month that she received. I don't know if all of you received this email about a trip out to, a leadership trip out to the White House, out to Washington, D.C. at the end of August. So there wasn't a lot of information. You kind of had to get into the email and click on some of the links to kind of get into it. But my understanding of this is that the White House is inviting county leadership from they've split it up into kind of different regions, because I think it's South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming this time. I think I read online that Minnesota went recently, sent a group, and they probably had a region for maybe Minnesota and Iowa, Wisconsin, I don't know. So this is something that they're kind of doing in small kind of regional segments, this invitation to have people come out to D.C. So Commissioner Pierce received the email, and it actually came to the commission inbox as well. So, and she was interested in possibly attending. But she wanted to, since it wasn't a budgeted trip, in looking at the budget, I believe there is budget enough to cover her attending this if the rest of the board is okay with it.
So these two items with the correction on the state's attorney's salary, the deputy state's attorney, do we need to take it off the consent agenda and vote on it separately, or we just can make that correction on the consent?
I think we can just make the correction because the travel request was there. I mean, It's just, we just wanted some additional explanation, and I think we can just note the correction as part of the consent agenda.
Okay. And then my travel request, are you taking that off the consent agenda, or are we leaving that on? And you're
I guess that would maybe be
anybody want it off?
If anybody wants it off, to vote on it separately. If not, we'll just leave it as part of the consent agenda.
Okay. Anybody want to add or subtract anything from the consent agenda? All right. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the correct wage information for our new deputy state's attorney.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to routine business. Would we have a motion as relates to claims?
Move approval.
Second.
Any corrections or additions on claims? Well, we're going to do a roll call vote on that.
Jensen?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Department head reports. Dick, we'll start with you.
Good morning.
I also have quite a few things coming up on the agenda, so I'll try to make this brief. June, better get in the correct month, I'm sorry. Wednesday, July 25th, we inspected bridges with Colin from Banner. Two of them that looked like they had significant water running through them and over them for the storm event. And they both came out really well, so that was good news. And ordered the bridge ends for the Highway 16 deck project that will be coming up, maybe not till November. Thursday, the 26th, the culvert project on Highway 29 was finalized, and also the asphalt striping for the patching and the overlay project were put together so that we could get that at the unit price that Dunick had from their striper. That's in addition to our striping we do through the state, so that's why we deal with that on an individual basis. Monday the 30th, checked, there were some cement trucks that were using our highway ditch for a clean out station on Highway 27. It wasn't quite as bad as it was made out to be, but it's still an issue that we needed to address so that they know that it's not acceptable. It just happened to be one driver that was thinking a little more independently. Follow up on the patching work done by Dunick. They did a nice job. That's all complete. They should hopefully be done with the overlay project by the end of this week. Tuesday the 31st, talked with Northern Truck. Our new chassis is in from Mack, which is a miracle in itself. We finalized the specifications that we require on our new boxes and stuff, and they're hopefully going to have that done in short order. Met with Rick Intermill on flood evaluation around his property. Also met with Sharon Telkamp on water problems in her neighborhood. Wednesday, August 1st, had to order the pusher axle for the new truck, and also visited on the phone with Scott Bierke about the culvert project, which he will, or one of his representatives will talk about later, so I won't dwell on that. Thursday, August 2nd, guys are getting ready to chip seal in Moody County. Also reviewed some items on the Hall Road agreement, which will also be later on the agenda, so I won't dwell on that. Yesterday, reviewed and checked over plans that were wrote up for the highway, our Highway 21, but it's 34th Avenue South. That'll be on the agenda, so I won't deal with that right now. Guy started chip sealing in Moody County. This afternoon, we'll have the TS&L meeting for the bridge on Highway 27. That's the one near Basin Electric. As you know, that's tour site location. That's where the engineering firm will determine what structure best fits that site. This is the one that we talked about briefly in our budget hearing that is going to be a very important structure in the near future. We put a Band-Aid on it a couple years ago because one of the pilings broke. Also another item that's coming up on the agenda, but we'll be talking with this road haul agreement coming up. Over this bridge, they will probably move close to 124,000 tons of gravel over this bridge with this project that we're talking about. So when we talk about that later, we'll touch on that and kind of give you an idea of the magnitude of what they're talking about. Our new wheel loader should be in this week or next. The overlay project will be done hopefully this week. Everything else is done. We're continuing to replace culverts, doing some fairly large ones in the northeast part of the county. which will be a real improvement. One of the things that has taken up some time, and we're going to deal with that later with a few items on the agenda, is water. And it continues to be a topic of conversation. And, you know, the one good thing about a 500-year storm event is it gets people talking. You see things that you've never seen before. So we just got to keep that in mind, that it is a very significant storm event. And then this morning, I met with Matt Barkley with the City of Brookings. We're getting together our salt proposals for road salt for 2019. Believe it or not, yesterday we had our last salt load delivered that we ordered clear back. So I think both of us and the state recognize that we've got to do things a little bit differently, put a little more pressure, so hopefully that'll work out. But other than that, I don't have anything unless you have questions for me.
Dick, you mentioned the culvert project on 29. Is that replacing the structure over the inlet there?
By Black Slough or whatever?
Is that where?
No, this one on 29 is south of 44, right as you come down the hill.
Oh, okay.
It's the real deep one. We had to have an excavator to do that, and that's really needed it for a long time, so. Yeah, other than that, but basically the ones we've been addressing now are the ones that we definitely need pressman and an excavator to do. So we're looking good that way.
I didn't know if it was a bridge on the farther south.
Oh, no. So, any other questions or? Okay.
Thank you. Sheriff? Vicki?
Good morning. We have been working in our office. We've been helping some of the towns on their levy requests that are going to be coming into our office, and also working with some of the special districts on levy requests. And Kristen and myself will be attending training in Oklahoma with Tyler on the 15th and 16th next week, so we won't be able to go to 10 county meeting, but that we are going to that. And Jenna continues to work with the surplus sale. Otherwise, it's been business as usual. Any questions?
No,
Anything
thank you.
going on with our machine where you can get your tags?
Nothing different. If we can find a place, but otherwise the state is not really looking at this time. So if we come up with something, they'll come and look at it, but that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Chris?
Good morning. Our office here, one of the things I wanted to bring up and just touch base on and talk with you about was our last storm, the flooding of basements, things like that. I fully expected to have more calls. I've had one of a person's basement that flooded, wondering what they can do and that. And right at this time, the process really is there's nothing we can do right now other than annotate it. We'll be there. This person that called, I put him on our building permit review list. So November 1, we're going to be there and look at his basement. If it's still gutted and things like that, we know the date of the event. So on November 1, if it's still all torn out, we'll remove the value of that basement finish for 2019, pay 20. And then when the taxes come due for the 18, due and pay in 19 in January, at that time, then I will go through the abatement process for the 5 months that they were taxed for something that wasn't there. So I just wanted to bring that up here to the board. You can help spread the word out there. I mean, we know the date of the storm. I've got the newspaper articles. I've got it written down. So the people that have flooded, and on the other side of things, if it flooded, a month ago and they've already got somebody there and it's repaired on November 1, There's no process. It was there on November 1 of 18. It's there on November 1 of 19. There's no change. So just wanted to bring the board and the public aware that there is a process. There is possibly some relief if there's flooding, and we'll look at those, and they're going to be on a case-by-case basis. I can't just go down like a tornado and go see all the damage, and we're not going to bother everybody and then find out this house flooded, this house flooded, this house nothing because they had sump pumps. You know, it's a waste of time and utility to try and canvass that area for that. So the public needs to come forward to our office, and we'll work with them accordingly. So our scheduled reviews, our apartment reviews, our staff has been to all the apartments physically. We've gathered what we can. We're waiting on a lot of information to come from the property owners. You know, what are their rents for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, what's the vacancies, what's their expenses, things like that. That's been pretty slow coming in, so I don't know how much we're going to be able to compile and correlate to an income approach, but we'll do what we can. We've also been doing our lake reviews. We're getting very close to being to everything physically for the first time on all of our lakes, and leaving tags. They're really starting to trickle in now, the appointments from tags that were left during the week when they've been there for the weekend. So we're going to be finalizing that hopefully before too long, and we're actually probably going to get started on our building permit lists and review list a little bit sooner. So today I'm going to be going, it's my travel request, it kind of came late, up to Redfield. We went up there and helped them a couple years ago when they had ProVal. We've been helping them for a couple weeks. Kim Markley, the director up there, today is her last day. She took a job in Mandan, North Dakota. So I'm going to go up for her retirement, but I'm going to go up there and help her deputy with some ProVal stuff prior to her leaving tomorrow. We've been working with them on the phone for the last week, 2 weeks, daily, 3, 4, 5 times a day on different things. So August 16th, my travel request is for Jacob and I to go to Sedasis. I've got some conflicts now. I'm not going to be able to go, but Jacob's going to go to the Tyler deal. That's our training for our tax software. August 27th, we had Department of Revenue present. They're going to do an ag land workshop on reading table 1s and 2s. Jacob and I are going to attend that, and that's in a travel request. And then just a note that September 16th through the 21st, Jacob, Reed, and I will be going to our annual school. Larry and Jerry are not attending this year. They're good on their schools, would rather stay back. So, and then lastly, Steve and Stacy and I have been emailing a lot, and Leanne and I have talked on the riparian buffer strip. So probably at the next commission meeting, we're going to have some discussion on the resolution for expanding the already approved list and how you want to roll forward with that. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bob?
Good morning. Last week we had where we had a safety week, and my office participated in the drills that we had, and we had a lunch where we gave severe weather safety presentations. Had a joint jurisdiction mining subcommittee meeting, and that come out pretty good. We're about ready to document some of that and get it to the actual joint jurisdiction committee. We had a communications drill for the South Dakota Office of Emergency Management. I had a NACO Justice conference call. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the City of Brookings City Manager to discuss emergency management activities, and that discussion came out good. He's interested in possibly having like a tabletop exercise for the community of Brookings, which in the past I've always I go where I'm welcome. Typically, is where I go, and if I'm not invited, I do my exercises throughout the county when I can. So it's comforting to know that the city of Brookings is reaching out to us now and wants to do a emergency management drill. So that's good. Tonight we have a zoning meeting. We have we'll be completing our planning and zoning portion of a proposed TIF district for a facility near Volga. And then once that process is done tonight, that'll shift over to the county commission. We have a couple conditional use permits for livestock production, and looks to be a good, interesting, long night. We'll keep it as short as we can, but I would venture to say midnight might be looking good. Other items, Volga Fire Department chief did contact me and stated that the fire department was having some issues with radios about 3 miles outside the city of Volga. And I contacted City of Brookings Fire Chief, who helps me with radio communications, and we're looking at it right now. And what we'll end up doing is we'll take some of our handhelds and our mobile devices out in our vehicles, and typically what we do is we do some in-house testing first, and then if it warrants where we got to bring in an outside group to help us determine our communications issues, then we'll come back through the commission and make sure you're aware of that procedure. I did go to NACO, and I got a fancy report that I gave you. I'm not going to read through that whole thing. I guess, did you have any questions? I included it in the packet, and it's like 5 pages long.
One of the things, and I think we've maybe talked about this, but you attended that forum on solar energy.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're working on the solar energy portion of our zoning ordinances now. Are you thinking there's anything we're going to take out of that, or?
That's my note here on that was there is a nationwide policy on solar that if a county wants to welcome it, we can actually bring in outside experts from the National Resource Lab to help us with even plan for it. We do have a section in Brookings County up there where the wind towers are. That's actually a section of land, four quarter sections. That's basically all it's good for is electrical use for our grid. You know, we got the national grid comes down through there, our national power lines come through there and everything. So to me, that's one area I think we could actually focus on and get some outside assistance and declare that like a possible solar area for people to look at. And if the commission's willing to do that, then we could probably move our solar along a little bit. You know, as far as solar on individual houses, we have no restrictions out in the county. The city, I believe, does have restrictions on it, but as far as the county, if someone comes in to build a new house, and as long as they got it on their plans and it's passed by the state electrical inspector, we don't prohibit solar. But I really think if we select that section up near White, up near the big power plant, that we could proceed on that. So,
Bob, when we attended that meeting, wasn't 1 acre or more was considered a large solar?
well, it doesn't take much to consider a solar farm, you know, and along with that, our wind towers are fixing to start up. Our Buffalo Ridge 4, that wind project will be starting shortly, and I presume Mr. Burke knows about it, and I know September we're going to do our conditional use permits for like the lay down yards and stuff like that, and they immediately start with all their heavy truck traffic right after that. So yeah, we'll proceed on that then, unless there's objection from the commission. I'll do some drafting of documents. I'll talk to the NACO people. I guess the other thing that come out of the NACO meeting is I am on a NACO board for 1 year as part of the National Association of County Planners. I don't know if I ever informed the board of that or not, but
I think it's a good idea to get prepared because up in Dual County or Cottington County, there have been requests up there. Commissioner from up there said so.
okay, yeah. I mean that's so smart. It's a semi-governmental thing controlled by the Department of Energy. So it's a legitimate program to get involved with. So we'll bring him in and start that process. And the other thing, I got a tri-state meeting on August the 15th. We got an LEPC meeting on August the 16th. And there's also a South Dakota Office of Emergency Management regional meeting in Mitchell that day. I am going to stay back for the local emergency planning committee meeting since one of my staff members have to be out. I feel I need to be in Brookings that day instead of over in Mitchell. I will be attending the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners meeting for 2 days, and then I'll come back and have to go down to Sioux Falls to an emergency management meeting for some reason they're meeting at the same time. I'll miss 2 days of the emergency management meeting, go out to pier and come back in. And other than that, that's all I have. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to regular business. And item A is an action to approve Resolution 18-25, a Bridge Improvement Grant Program Resolution authorizing submission of application for structure number 06-153-200.
So move.
Second.
Dick, did you want to say anything about this?
This is a bridge that we're just going to shoot for a preliminary engineering grant on. It will be one of them coming up. It isn't a river bridge, but it's east of the ones we're doing on 12. It's on that Sinai Road, same road. It's just kind of a formality thing. Hopefully, if they've got some money this year, now that they've went up to 15 million and we've got another 400,000 to apply for, that we'll be able to get this preliminary engineering one and move forward. So,
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B, action to approve Agreement 18-82, an application for occupancy of right-of-way of county highways made by Sioux Valley Energy.
Move approval. Second.
Anything from you, Dick?
nope.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item C, action to approve Agreement 18-83, a Brookings County Pictometry Purchase Agreement between Brookings County and the East Central Regional Communication Council.
Move approval.
Second.
Stacy, did you want to address this?
This is the last of the three other entities that we partner with to help pay for the pictometry imaging. The others, BMU and the City of Brookings, have already signed this agreement, and we've already signed on with them as well. I think we approved those at one of the last meetings, so this was the last group we were waiting for to get signed on to be a partner with us. So,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item D, action to approve Agreement 18-84, the East Central Regional Communication Council Joint Powers Agreement.
Move approval. Second.
Go ahead, Stacy.
and we had some updates to that joint powers agreement that we have with the city that establishes the E911 board. Just some change in the language as to the membership of the council, just to clarify some things that what it said and what we were actually doing were kind of two different things. So we made sure it said the verbiage was clear on that as to what we were actually doing. It talked to about discuss some of recording of fixed assets, the proportion for if the board were ever to be dissolved, that was clarified, and then Commissioner Krogman recalls, probably, was it back in 2014, 2016, where you did the $30,000 minimum cash balance in that, should be maintained in that fund. That was an amendment to the agreement. At that time, they didn't reapprove the agreement in its entirety. So that amendment was actually added just into now the context of the agreement. So those are kind of the highlights of the things that were changed within that when the board looked at it. Mike and Leanne are both in that board. If I misspoke or I missed something.
Any questions? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have a 9 o'clock scheduled agenda item, Oslo Township Culvert Request, and the Oslo Township Supervisor, Mr. Bierke, you can come on forward and bring whoever you've got with you today, and if you'd come up, and I think that microphone is turned on, is that correct? And then just, would each of you say who you are, and then go ahead and tell us what you want us to know.
Okay, good morning. I am Kevin Treebwasser. Scott Bierke cannot be here today, so I'm filling in for him.
And I'm Dave Peterson. We're both.
Also Township Supervisors.
Great.
We have a 6-foot culvert that needs replacing on intersection of 463 and 218, just to the north of that. And it's a school bus route, so we're hoping to do it in the next couple of weeks. The cost of the culvert and to install it is about $12,500. And I guess we were asking for some cost share on that. We have a number of other culverts similar to this one that will need replacing in the not too distant future, but this one here needs to be done right now. And I think I brought the paperwork in that we had so far for you guys to review ahead of time. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or not.
Yeah, there was a packet of information that I handed out this morning, and the top cover was the copy of the minutes. The Oslo Township minutes was the cover page, then some quotes and their annual statement, and then there was a picture that Scott had sent to me of the culvert too, so
Okay.
I put that in there.
So what's your request? Is it asking for the culvert or?
If we could get some assistance, yeah, on paying for the culvert. I mean, the culvert would be about $6,273. Installation, we've got 2 different bids, one for $6,100, including some concrete and gravel, crushed concrete and gravel, and another one for $5,900. But that does not include the concrete and gravel, so they're real similar, but
Dick, have you checked this out?
Correct. Yeah, it's in bad shape. The bottom's all rusted. There really isn't much bottom there. It's fairly deep also. So it'll involve quite a bit to get it done.
There's quite a bit of fill over top of it.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
estimate 12 feet maybe.
Okay.
We're gonna try to make it so it's, right now it's a 50-foot culvert in there, and if we go 60 foot, we can get better slopes. But it drops off pretty sharp right now.
I think the last couple we've done 50% of the cost of installation, combination of the whole thing to have it done. The last couple we've done.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to do 50% of the installation and cost of the culvert.
Could we put a dollar amount in there as opposed to saying 50%?
Do you want, I guess it doesn't matter to me, I guess, is this going to be the actual bid? I mean, it's just more of an email type of thing. I don't know if we want to say $6,150 or something like that. I don't know.
Yep. Total cost is supposed to be right about 12.5. So yeah, anything you can do would be appreciated.
And then, so I'd make a motion for, let's go $6,250.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. I guess discussion I would say is this, is if you have some, we're, in our budget, we're looking at potentially continuing to help assist down the road, and we're working on next year's budget of possibly $100,000 for application for these types of situations. And so we've kind of opened up the purse strings this year for some stuff, and obviously this one needs to get done right away. But I would say down the road, if you have a few more that you're going to be looking at for next year, maybe through your budgeting process, if we get our budget approved here in September with that in there, we're going to be looking at putting together some guidelines for requests for that $100,000. So I would say, start working on your budget for next year, that if you're going to put those in there, to try to maybe make some requests for those other ones that need to be done.
Okay.
So, and maybe in the future, if you had a actual bid from Prusman or your other contractor, if you can include that in the packet.
Yeah, and I just got the one bid this morning from the one, and the other person talked to Scott, and that was just a verbal deal. But
Okay.
I do have an actual bid here from another one,
Okay.
if you want to see it.
Well, I'm good with it, but I mean,
Okay.
just
Yeah,
if you
could
can include it
yeah,
in the
probably
packet.
provide a copy to Stacy, just so we've got it in the record.
Okay.
If you stop down where you were, I think you stopped in yesterday, have Michelle just make a copy down there, and
Okay.
we'll have it then on file.
Okay. Will do. Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go back to regular business. Item E, action to declare the following items as surplus property to dispose of, and it's a commissioner's desk.
This,
No, not
Oh.
required.
it's okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do we want a motion first before we discuss?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is the old table that the commissioners used when we held meetings at the County Resource Center, and then when we moved over to the 1921 building. And 4-H has been using it some, but they just don't need it anymore, and it's just a big cumbersome table that's in the way now. And so Sonia asked kind of last minute last week if we could still, if this had ever gotten surplus, and we researched and couldn't tell that it ever had, and in order to get it on the sale, we wanted to get it on the agenda to get it officially surplus so that we could sell it.
Is this a large table in that meeting room?
It was the kind of like the dais. The dais that the commission sat at. It was a big wood, and there might have been a small one for staff too.
Oh,
Big
okay.
wood dais that the commissioners sat at when the commission meetings were both at the County Resource Center in rooms, I think C and D there for a while, and then when we moved over to the 1921 building, we had a chambers there, and it sat up on that stage.
So that's going to go on the
This-
auction, or is that
Is
going
it
to
not
the
going on
landfill?
the auction?
It
I don't
says
think so
disposal.
because
It's going
we've
to plan.
already, I've already published the
Okay.
public notice with everything that we'll be selling
It's maybe
online.
and it's
so-
maybe to the point where it's been moved so many times that it's falling apart. So
Right. That's-
okay. Yeah, I didn't see. It came in late.
Where is that at now?
4-H has it. They've been storing it.
My only question is, all right, so it's some type of oak furniture that maybe has some historical significance because it came out
Actually,
of the courthouse.
it wasn't. It was made specifically when we moved. I think when we actually it started in the 1921 building. It was made specifically then, so it's not
Okay.
even
So
15
it's not
years
original
old.
courthouse.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item F, discussion and possible action on 34th Avenue drainage, and I think Commissioner Jensen, you were going to lead this discussion, is that correct?
Yeah, I talked with Dick a little bit, and the reason I brought this forward, last fall, we had a rain event, and this area of the road went underwater. We looked at it afterwards, and the culverts, after the water disappeared in the waterways, the culverts were still sitting full of water. There's a drainage concern in that area. Then we had our winter and our spring thaw. It went over the road again. And I know the last couple weeks it was a large rain event, but we had the same issue again. I drive down this road daily, and as of yesterday, the waterway, the water's kind of going down, but our culverts are still sitting full of water. There's some concern in that area with some drainage. I don't know, Dick, if you have talked with Banners a little bit, if you can give an idea or a overview of what you think might fix this situation.
I didn't address any solutions other than, I guess the feeling was, what are we going to try to accomplish? Because, like, for example, in the area where we have problems, the road was raised roughly 19 inches when we did the construction project. It's such a basin where the water is spread out that we could raise it again. And are we going to just back water up east of the road? You could probably do more hydraulic investigation and see if we could add additional culverts, maybe move one closer. As far as digging and ditching deeper, as you remember, we have a real dilemma with BMU and Sioux Valley's poles. A lot of areas in the ditch, we had to protect those poles. I think in the immediate area where we discussed, Larry, you can definitely see where I think a slice or a cut could improve it. Whether it would solve it, I don't think so. I guess what I would recommend is going back and looking at maybe some proposals. The unfortunate thing is when you look at south to north, and as flat as it is, you're not going to dig very deep if you're thinking of ditching, and you're going to hit groundwater, as evidenced by all the ponds out there that are full. The drainage way where it goes along the ditch south of 214, I think you could probably get that to drain significantly better. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you might not have the conditions that you face right now. Another issue, according to, they did a wetlands delineation report on 34th Avenue before we ever did the project, and it's kind of typical when they did that investigation in 2014 and prepared the report in 2015 for our project, everything was dry. So you did borings and you did plant investigations and stuff to determine your wetlands and they got it through the Corps of Engineers. Basically, it's right in the road ditch area is where your significant problem exists. So either creating a higher road without more openings, I don't think you're going to solve anything. You'll just hold water back on the east side of the road better. Your road will be dry. The other thing is, in most cases, the road has some other issues that are going to always be problems for us. The manholes are the manholes. We raise it again, we'll adjust them. The power lines are the power lines. And when we obtained right-of-way for the project, that right-of-way was obtained based on the elevations that we were planning to achieve. In the short term, raise the road in that neighborhood, clean out the ditch, and you'll probably eliminate 90% of your problems. Other than that, for as wet as it stays, the road's holding up pretty darn good. And the base, we added 17 inches of base material when we constructed it. So I think if we had more grade to work with, I think I could give you a more definitive answer. But as flat as that is, and the way, I just don't know where you're going to put that water. When you look at from the south half mile, starting at 32nd Avenue South, you're basically level for that entire distance. And that's after we raised it and put it to down there it isn't much, but as you go north, you raise it more, where we're getting into the water problems. Does that help? I don't know. I'm at loss because it's so flat. You can dig anywhere and you're going to hit water and create a pool. So I don't know how you're going to eliminate without the groundwater, the water table going down. I don't know how you're ever going to dry it up, other than where Larry and I seen, we could go in there and cut with a blade and cut it over to the ditch on the west side, and possibly you could get to where it'll be an improvement. So,
Dick, as I looked at that out there, and the continued mining just obviously north of where it's starting to flood, as you remove that land, that dirt, so to speak, the water table starts to spread out and it's finding other places to leak out. And it looks to me like that's what's happened since the road was built. As the mining continues, the water, I know it's level, but a foot of difference in the dirt level spreads the water towards that road. The only other way to do it is try and berm it, which obviously is not going to work either. But elevating the road is probably the only option. But I wonder where we're going to displace this water to. You talked about going under 214th to the south. We're going to put that water on somebody else's property. So, I mean, it's some difficult issues, but the mining that's going on out there is going to continue to make this worse over the years. The question is, do we address it now, or we wait till the road deteriorates and then we have to replace it? I don't know the answer to that.
Right. You know, it's almost a case if you, you know, you wouldn't want to build a bridge because it would be cost prohibitive. Some of the solutions that I discussed with Banner are, you know, cost related, cost benefit weights and balances. An amateur suggestion, you know, it's almost an ideal spot to put in a low water crossing where plan and build for the water to, in certain events, it will cross the road, but the road's designed to handle it and it will withstand the pressures it's getting. It's, again, they'll probably hang me from the flagpole out front for saying it, but that is one of those things where you could put culvert after culvert after culvert and they'll all be equalizers. You can put a low water crossing in, reinforce, and build up the base of the road, and the water in certain storm events will cross, and in snow melt will cross, but the road can withstand it. You can be assured that people aren't going to drive through it and be washed away down into Moody County. You know, it's not moving that fast, but it has to go somewheres, and we have to give it, we have to deal with it, so to speak. So,
But at least if we did a little bit of ditching there where we talked about to give the water a chance to get to that waterway.
Right.
Which would give room for the water to come to.
Yeah. I think Larry...
many years ago, there was a low water crossing in that area, 40, 50 years ago. And it sat with water all the time, and there was always cars stalled there. I don't think we want to go that route. But if we can give it a chance to at least get to that waterway to eliminate, you know, the 2-3 inch rains when it goes over, you be fine. But if you get a 5-6 inch rain, I understand it probably will go over the road. But I mean, it's a safety concern having that road underwater, and we got it open. I mean, you'd almost like the viaduct, close it when it rains. We don't want to do that. It's too important. So,
Are you saying, Larry, to do the ditching that's south of 214? Is that what you're talking about, that ditch?
it's on the west side of the road.
Yeah.
Dick and I looked at it. There's a high spot there that keeps it from going into the waterway. If they can go out and minimal work there to get the water to at least, I mean, the culvert today is sitting full of water, yet the water in the waterway is down. It just can't get away there in that area. At least give it a chance to drain out of the culverts. In a way, and like Mike said, we don't want to have that water sitting alongside of our road and basically soaking into the road and deteriorating our road base. You know?
Right. And 34th Avenue isn't the only one we're experiencing
No.
that also.
No.
So, but this, I think it's a very good starting point to clear the ditch a little bit. It's extremely wet, so we're going to have to reach out there and see what we can do to make a rough cut. And then when it dries up, if ever, we'll try to get in there and blade it, make a swale that looks presentable. So,
Has Banner had any suggestions?
when I talked to Brad Wormers, he was just asking me if anything jumped out as unusual or what I would consider needs to be immediately addressed. And I just told him, I says, well, I don't see it when it's a 500-year storm event. It's hard to determine right now. But his idea, if the easiest method would be trying to find a way to get that water to move, and without going deeper in that particular area, I don't know how it will move. When I looked at the plans and also did some walking along the road yesterday, You know, as you can see, there's not much ditch there. I mean, you're never going to see, a road ditch is designed to handle the water that comes off the surface, period. This has got some significant drainage going through there and meandering. If it was focused to a stream, I'd say let's put a short structure across there, and we'll solve it, or put a bigger box, but that it would involve obviously environmental work and some permits through the Corps. But you're still only going to get so much water to go through there, and if your road is a little bit higher and you're not letting any more water through, so to speak, you're just going to dam it up, and I don't know if you'd want to do that either. So,
Well, I just, you know, obviously this last event was huge, but the water was over the road prior to that. And
Sure.
So, and that first event wasn't that uncommon. And so
right.
that's what concerns me more is this wasn't just because of the 8 inches we had. This was previous 2 or 3 inches. And I think that something needs to be done there to alleviate that it's not closed on a monthly basis, you know, once or twice a month or whatever. So, and after that event happened, Larry and I went over and looked at it. We talked, and I talked with Brad, and Brad said he was going to come up with some stuff. So, I guess I'd like to hear from them a little bit too.
Okay.
You know, on what are our options, if the options, what they will cost, and if they will actually alleviate the problem, or if they won't, like you're saying there. If there's some short-term things we can do, or what we have to plan for long-term to fix the problem. But if it was happened just once on that time, I would probably say, you're right, let's just block it off for 8-inch rains that happen every 2 years, or 20 years, excuse me, or 200 years. But if it's happening on a monthly basis, I think we've got an issue we've got to solve. So if you could check with Banners there, and if maybe.
How about on 213 then, where it was running across, where we've got kind of the same problem. It just has no place to go. Would we want to investigate the possibility of raising that in there too? Or I guess I'm looking at the pretty comparable examples of the same thing, that they're very important roads, and yet they both got the same problem. So
on 213, is that on the paved or the unpaved portion?
on the paved, well, the unpaved is really ridiculous.
Right.
But the paved, this is the paved east of the plant,
Okay.
east of 475, where it was coming through that guy's field darn near as deep as the ears of corn. I mean, that's a lot of water coming through there, and there's no real relief there other than, I would say, to either build the road up or whatever, but we're going to have the same thing. We're going to be damming water if we do that. So we might want to look at both of them, but for right now, I'll just get with Banner, see if they could give us some proposals and maybe even some cost estimates on something that would be substantial, is what I'm hearing you say, something that would be doable and an improvement, or?
Yeah, I guess that what concerns me is people come flying down that road. I mean, we were asking people to, like the semis, the tractor trailers, to use that road to get there rather than coming through town. And if they're come flying down that road and aren't aware of that type of an event, that's where you're going to have some issues. And if it's just continued local traffic, the local traffic will understand and probably avoid it. But we're asking non-local traffic to use this 34th to get to those businesses or those the factories there that are producing stuff that have all that type of thing. So, I'd hate to send them down this road and say, oh, by the way, careful, it might be underwater.
Right.
And so without getting there, because they're not going to be local, they're not going to know that.
Exactly.
And if it's a local road where most local people say, okay, for the last 30 years we've had water over this, so we're going to go around it. But.
And another thing that it was kind of a untimely situation, but it's too bad 6th Street wasn't done before we had this problem, because 6th Street really is designed well to handle that truck traffic and it's a shorter way, but now they're used to coming off at the Sinai exit and coming north on our road, which is fine and dandy, but we do have some issues with it also. So.
Mm-hmm.
Did that address your concerns, Commissioner
Yeah,
Jensen?
it sounds, Dick's got a plan to move forward, and that's kind of what we needed. It wasn't going to fix itself, and if we move forward, and we can hopefully keep the water off the road a little bit more. So,
We have a scheduled agenda item at 9:30, and I think we're close enough that I'm going to ask the folks from Madera Township to come on up. When you get up here, would you introduce yourselves on the record, and then you can go ahead and start? Thank you. I do.
Good morning. I'm Mark Richards. I'm the Madera Township Chairman this year. It's been a year since we've been here, and we haven't exactly been sitting at home doing nothing, but certainly we've tried to make some headway ourselves and wanted to report back to you where we're at and what we have learned with that. This is in regard to 217th between 468 and 469, if you all remember, a mile south of the Elkton Sinai Road with that. And but anyway, the bottom line is here earlier this spring, we contracted with Banner and Associate to do a limited study of 217th Street to see if there's any solution to alleviate the problem and allow additional traffic up and down that road. You have a copy of that study in front of you, and to make a long story short, their study has shown that if we go into 217th, and if you look at page 3, it kind of tells you real quick what it is. There's two tables there. The first table says that if we added 4, 10, or 26-foot culverts to that road, and we had a 2-year, 5-year, or 10-year storm, we're going to see basically no difference in the water level by adding those culverts. It's going to stay that high. It's going to move more water, but it's going to stay that high with things. And then the second one is simply a cost estimate for that work. And that work shows that we're going to spend $50,000 to $500,000 and gain absolutely nothing with it. So as a township board, we have basically decided that it is our job to maintain access on 217th to the landowners, and that is what our goal will be. But we do need to look at perhaps the larger problem. And this whole problem has come about as a result of the dike north of 216, north of the Sinai Road, that has ruptured over the last 15 years, and it has moved the river channel from the existing river channel, as everybody here thinks about it, basically 3/4 of a mile to the west. One thing we did find out in this study is what Banner determined this spring is that the current river channel handles 11% of the water this spring. The new river channel handles 89% of the water. And this somewhat goes along with Jay from East Central Water District, who a couple years ago did flow surveys as well, and he was saying 70-30 at that time. So the water has moved over, and it has gone from a deep river channel to a flat river channel, and disperses across 2, 4, 6, 7 sections. It creates problems for us on roads 468. Water is now going over that road on a more regular basis, and things. So this gives us the information that we were looking for. One is there's really no fix to 217 unless we go back to the dike. And the dike is an interesting situation. Whose dike is it? I don't know. You know, if the dike would have been maintained 20 years ago, we wouldn't be here today. But we have talked with Banner and Associates, and as they state in here, there is an application process to reinstall that dike or repair that dike, and they would be willing, I mean, certainly, as a contract, to lead our township and perhaps as a partnership, the county, to find the solution, or if there is a solution to it. They mentioned that this process for the dike to repair that would be a similar process to the situation you guys had when Sinai was too full and you were draining water. So we're going to go back and it's going to be a long and lengthy process to get it all done. But you know, that's the situation where we're sitting with it now. I guess we'd open it to you guys for questions at this point.
And I will say that I had a conversation. I attended the Madera Township meeting last night and had a chance to look at this report and to talk about what this issue is. And there is a serious drainage problem in that portion of Madera Township. And when the commission is sitting as the drainage board, which is what we met as, I want to say it was last September, but I'm not sure. I printed those minutes off and then I didn't bring them. And we talked about this and we sent Madera Township and Mr. Hill back with directions to maybe explore what some of the alternatives are. And the township, I think that study that you had Banner do costs the township $7,500. Is that right? And what Banner is suggesting, if we want to try to fix that dike, is to submit that 404 application.
Correct.
And I want to suggest that we, as the drainage board, look at partnering in the submission of that application to, does that go to the Corps of Engineers? Is that where
Correct.
that goes? To the Corps of Engineers. And did you have an opportunity to talk to Banner if they did the application, what that would cost?
I did speak with Manners for quite some time this morning. And speaking with Kent, he says, you know, the initial application process isn't a long situation. It's once the application has been made, before you're going to get an answer, is going to be the lengthy time period.
Right. But what would it cost for them to do? Do you have an idea for them?
He wasn't in a position to really say that in our conversation. But, you know, I think I've got to think. I told him, I said, well, I'll be back with you here a little bit and, you know, see if you can come up with a number for me. So, you know, I don't think we're talking $2,500 or something, or $5,000 maybe to do the application. And then once the application is submitted, then who knows what it would be.
But the township would have more clout if the county participates as one of the applicants on that application. And I don't think by committing to submitting the application, we're necessarily committing to spending a certain dollar amount. Is that correct at this point? Because we don't know what it would cost to fix the dike.
Well, we don't either. And, you know, that's why we spent this money to find this out.
Exactly.
And we feel that each step is necessary. Now, while it sounds like this is entirely a township issue, you know, it's our roads, 468 and 217, and it backs up on 215 as well and creates some problems for us. But, you know, looking ahead to you as the county is right now you are scheduled to replace the bridge on 216 in the next year. Is that right, Dick? 2020, but it's on the schedule. And we're replacing a bridge that's going over a creek because the river's moved. And now we have the river going through a bridge that isn't adequate for the river. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
That's fair, but that's how they'll base what structure
Right,
they put in
right.
there.
So you know, to the county has a dog in this fight as well, simply for the fact that if you get the dike back under control and you move the river back to where it was, it's going to put it under the bridge that's been there forever, and you know, go that way because ultimately it's two bridges. It's the bridge to the west, and then the bridge down the Country Club Road, because that's where now the river crosses further south, a mile and a half. So, with things. So I guess, we'd be asking equal partners on the application process, not past that point, simply to get the process started. Because we as a township board have no expertise in this. We're dependent upon someone else, and we've decided the only way we can do that is to go to banners and work with that. And understanding that, I don't want a blank check from you guys, but, we would come back with to you is one is, are you willing to be partner? Yes or no? Assuming the dollar and cents figure, we will get that dollar and cents figure and come back to you and let you know where that would be as far as an application process fee would be, and then move forward at that point.
And everybody probably understands this, but I didn't understand it, so I want to say it, and then you can tell me if I've got this right. Where the Big Sioux comes out of its normal channel, it comes out in Madera Township and it goes back in Madera Township. So when we're looking at water rights, it's all the Madera Township people. It's not southern landowners in Moody County, for example. So there's not an issue with that, and it's not the northern townships. It comes out and goes back in because this dike broke. And I just think that this is a big enough county issue, and it affects enough of our taxpayers that we should help. I'm not saying there's a dollar amount attached to that, but I think to be a co-applicant on the application to go into the Corps, and Mr. Hill could maybe submit whatever information the county needs that they need from the county and from the resources that we've got to complete that application. What would your thoughts be?
Well, just a couple of quick questions. Number one, do we still have a drainage board? I was not aware that, I thought that was dismantled.
By state law, the Brookings County Commission is the drainage board.
Is a drainage board,
We
but
do not
hasn't
have a
taken any
drainage.
action.
We do not have a drainage ordinance.
We do not have a drainage ordinance
By
anymore.
state law, we do have a drainage board.
Okay, so we don't have any ordinances to follow if we meet as a board. Second question, this dike, when it was built initially, and I know nothing about this hydrologist stuff, but when it was built initially, what was its purpose at that time? Was it to divert the water the way it's going now?
It was to maintain
the
river within
channel.
its banks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I know DNR has been out and talked to you folks. I didn't make that meeting. And they weren't interested in,
Not a real positive meeting.
okay, to say the least, it was probably not a positive meeting.
NRCS and
So this application process,
yeah,
as we
and the Corps.
go through this application process, we're still going to have to deal with them straight up.
Correct.
So what we're hoping is the information that you provided already, plus the application process, will maybe change the conversation. That's kind of our hope.
Well, in that, again, speaking with what I would consider as close to an expert as I've got anyway, that his comment was that the dike was there and has failed is a positive thing. It was there. It's not like we're building something brand new.
Right.
And, I would love to be able to tell you what, the Corps and NRCS and everybody's going to say, but
I'm going to guess that if we go really far back in history, there was no record of who put the dike in.
the WPA
At least from the
project,
Corps.
yeah.
Core side of it that just materialized overnight, and
That
that's the
would
way it
be-
was.
We certainly don't have any information on it, Mike.
Okay. Well, and I don't mind the process and going forward. I really don't. I think we need to address it, and if it goes nowhere, it goes nowhere, but at least we've made the effort. What I'm concerned about is this process with the Corps sometimes really hits a wall. And, if this is an effort you think is going to be successful, then I think or it has a chance, we move forward with it. I would prefer you come back with some sort of a firm estimate on the cost so we know what that is before we approve it, and you could probably get that pretty quickly from them for another meeting.
Again, I have spoke with them,
Yeah.
and, he said, I hate to scare you, but you could spend a lot of money on these things.
On the
And
application.
I understand that, and certainly you guys do as well. But, until we make that application and get the ball started, we're not talking at this point any engineering fees or anything. We're talking simply someone that can negotiate their way through the paper trail, I guess, at this point to get things started.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a
I go ahead, Dick.
Oh, for clarification, Mark, a 404 permit is generally done to explain what work will be done and what's supposed to be accomplished. I guess, in my mind, that's assuming you've already got permission to replace it. Then you would go get a 404 permit to accomplish that remediation of what you want to do. I guess I was misunderstanding. I thought you were saying that nobody really gave you permission to fix it.
No, no one has at this point. And, you know, if you look, the reestablish of the division dike on north of 216 is, you know, the areas that they looked at right away is perpetual easements existing under NRCS Wetland Reserve Program, water rights that exist to the Western Channel is a concern. And then the permit application would also have to be submitted to the Corps. And it would, you know, and again, then it gets to the 404 and the Clean Water Act and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And
okay.
the landowner that the dike, the private property owner, he already has said in writing that as long as he doesn't have to pay for it, he's not opposed to having it fixed. Okay, yeah, so he's already said that. And I think, if I understood this right, that it's maybe somewhere between 50 yards and 100 yards long, the spot, and it's a clay dike, clay and dirt.
Probably built with all sorts of,
you know,
whatever material was available.
So
there might be a great old car in there for you, Mike. I don't know, but you know, and everything else that falls. but you know, we were there. I guess this process started in 12 or 11, 12, and at that time, you know, the breach was probably 50 to 70 yards wide. Probably kind of tough to get out there right now. It might be kind of wet, but you know, that's the process to go through and to get it all started.
Well, I believe in a previous meeting we had, I cannot remember the individual's name from the state, but his instructions were to do the application process. Right. The township needed to proceed. You've done that. You've done your legwork. You already started the process, and we are involved in this process just because of our county road. It is causing Dick's Bridges and the county's bridges some issues. I feel we should be involved, but you guys have started. You initiated what we were instructed to do. I'd support being a partner in that.
And Mike, was that a consensus then?
Yeah, absolutely. It just kind of amazes me when the government gets involved in some of these things. It could be a lot less expensive to make the fix than it is to get permission to make the fix. Like by 10, 20 times more to get approval than it is to actually.
Under the cloak of darkness would have been a positive thing, but
yeah, a side dumper full of rocks that fell over out there, I guess. But no, it's unfortunate that it has to go to this length. But I understand the process too. So you got to move forward. I agree.
So do we want them to come back with what it's going to cost to do the application, and then would put that on the agenda as an action item that we would co-partner, and that would be a co-applicant on the application, and that we'll spend up to blank dollars depending
Perfect.
on what that amount is. Is that what you all are saying?
we will contact Manners today and work forward with them and try to get back to you within the next couple of weeks.
Be nice to have some sort of a timetable presented to us.
I think the initial
at least on the application process.
Right. I think the
review
application process can be timetabled. I think after that, you guys are back in 2 weeks? We'll have it for you in 2 weeks.
Get it to Stacy, and she'll get it on the agenda.
Perfect.
This is interesting information. Obviously, I can't read it all while we're sitting here.
Well,
listen to you at the same time, but this will give us time to review this.
I mean, it
information
answered
too.
a lot of questions that I think we all kind of assumed a little bit, but it did answer questions for us, and that's what we're looking for is answers.
That's what you need to start the process.
Yeah. But is everybody good with this little piece right here? Okay, while we're here. In regards to the rain event, and as you were speaking of 34th Avenue, obviously south of town, the rain event created issues for us as well with that. And we have had these issues have popped up. There's been that I have been to one meeting, I believe, where city and county talked about the drainage going south. And we have, you guys are working on a joint jurisdiction, changing the whole concept of the joint jurisdiction. Is that correct? In
Making some changes.
And I guess we would love to see that joint jurisdiction board, or whatever it would be called, to take an active role in holding our good neighbors to the north, the city of Brookings, responsible to create a drainage plan for their community through our community. As it is now, the water gets to 32nd, comes under 32nd, and then goes down along Madera Avenue and just continues to sprawl and sprawl and sprawl. If you look at a map, there is a meandered drainage way that goes to the river and things, but again, it's another project and it's another drainage issue that certainly has no perfect answer, but it's something that needs to be addressed as the community continues to grow, and we certainly want to see the growth there, but we need to address issues for somebody 3-4 miles south of town. And now with the joint jurisdiction being 3 miles from 32nd Avenue, 3 miles almost gets you to the river with it. But I guess if we could be involved as a township board or whatever it would be in the joint jurisdiction, I know Rob Pexham as Madera Township has been involved in that, and it's something that we would like to see a little push on as well. So I guess, is that fair, Adam?
I think it's very fair. Yep.
So that's kind of where we're at, but we thank you for your time. Stacy, we'll have a price back to you within 2 weeks, so for your next board meeting or commission meeting.
And I'll close the agenda about the Wednesday before that
Okay.
meeting, so the next meeting's the 21st.
Okay, I'll get a hold of
So, yeah, but we can stay in touch with each other, and
it. Okay,
even if you don't have the paperwork, if you know you're gonna have it, we can get it on the agenda and get the paperwork in later. So we'll talk.
okay, all right, 21st, we'll put that on our calendar. Questions from anybody else?
Commission? Thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Time.
And I think that brings us down to your report, Stacy.
Yes. So the general fund, I included the general fund surplus analysis information where we are as of June. And we're a little bit lower than what we have been, kind of a little lower than the average, but nothing to be alarmed at this point. So that information is there. I included the public hearing notice. I think I'd sent it out to you already, but it's for tonight at 5:30. The city's Planning and Zoning Commission is meeting and having a public hearing on a TIF district for the city of Brookings. They meet here in this room, so you're note of that. Then we have information that Jim, our GIS coordinator, provided me. We've been approving the agreements with the pictometry, and he created a table showing what our revenue is, because when we get this revenue in from the beacon subscriptions and some other sales, that offsets some of the costs that since we get that in as revenue, we offset the cost to our other partners. So those are the dollar amounts there. And we did receive an invitation. It's coming up next Wednesday for an appreciation volunteer picnic for the Brookings County Historical Museum Board. And they do need an RSVP by tomorrow. So I know Commissioner Pierce has indicated she could go. Did the rest of you plan on attending that at all? Ryan, no.
That is Wednesday evening.
Wednesday at
Same as our
5:30.
Penn County meeting, right?
Yeah, the 10 county meeting is during the day. Yep. That's in Madison at noon, and that wraps up, you get back about 3:30, 4 o'clock, I suppose, and then this is at 5:30 over in Volga, in the city park, and the rain site is the community center right there, too, if the weather doesn't cooperate.
Maybe.
You can't, they need to RSVP by tomorrow. Mike? Larry?
Yeah, write me down.
Okay.
Volga's on the way back from Madison.
What time did that start again, Stacy?
5:30. 5:30 over in Volga.
5:30, okay. I
Yep.
just got it in the wrong spot, so.
And then, before I get into some of the things that were a little more, could potentially be a little more lengthy in discussion, I did set out this morning, there is an agenda for the Conservation District meeting. That's coming up tomorrow, too, at 8:15 tomorrow morning, their Board of Supervisors meeting. Some other upcoming dates noted. The CDI golf outing this week, are, like we mentioned, next Wednesday is the 10 county meeting. Lake County is hosting down in Madison at Nikki's restaurant. That starts at noon. And then we just discussed the historical museum picnic. The Conservation District tour is after your next meeting on the 21st. We're going to carefully watch that agenda so that we can be wrapped up and then out to the Conservation District building by noon and have, they're going to serve lunch, and then we'll go on the tour that afternoon. I'm thinking you probably all individually received invitations to the Mayor's Award reception. That's on August 30th at 5 p.m. at McCrory Gardens Visitor Center. Labor Day, believe it or not, is coming up less than a month away, Monday, the September 3rd. And then I think I've got everybody that can make it ready to go for the Fall Convention in Pier, September 9th through the 11th. Also, the end of last week, we did receive a couple of quotes for working on the preparation of the lots here to the south of this building to remove the remaining buildings and get that prepped this fall. And as I had mentioned, if the quote came in over $50,000, we'd have to look at kind of taking a step back and bidding it. But it came in at just over 31,333. VJ Allers got that quote, so they'll be doing that work this coming up this fall. As we discuss the culverts, back we'd already had agreed to help Windsor Township, and now today with Oslo. I don't know, has Windsor Township submitted anything to you, Dick, for payment? Where do you see those bills being paid out of? Is that something that you want taken out of the commission budget, or is that something that you see coming out of the highway budget? Because I think with these given amounts, I think what I would do is just submit a claim to be paid directly to these townships now.
Where do we budget the 100,000?
The 100,000 is in,
Next
for next year. It's not budgeted for 18, but that is in the general fund, in the commission budget in the general fund. There's no budget there this year per se, but we could take it out of there knowing then I'm going to be asking for contingency at the end of the year. Windsor Township had 2 projects, and then Oslo Township. Yes, so really it's just the 2 township requests. I can't recall the dollar figure right offhand for Windsor, but the $62.50 today, do you recall the dollar amount that was approved for Windsor?
Like 11.5 or so like that. So roughly $16,000, $17,000 total. I think for this year, I'd just take it out of the highway budget and then next year plan on doing like Ryan says, set
With
up
the
a
100,000
objective
in-
way of doing it so we know what we've got to work with.
We can do that. And I can work with Dick and figure out what budget line he wants that out of, and I can submit a claim against that to get a check to those townships, because I think they're thinking that the money is coming and we have to go through our claims process, even though you
Well,
approve it at this level.
I think they should get the work done before they submit a bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I'd give them a check. I'd make sure they get the doggone work done and approve it, and then send us an invoice, and we'll make sure that it all adds up.
Do you want
Yeah.
to reach out to those townships to let them know that?
Well, I think I already have. They
You-
pretty well
okay,
know that
they
we're
are
not
aware
just
of
going to
that.
pay
I just wanted, I
shit.
guess I just wanted that to be clear that was the process. Okay. As long as that has been communicated to them, that's fine. I just didn't want that, we get to year end and we've approved these and they're wondering how to get paid, so.
Dick, when you hear that work is done, are you going to do a drive-by and check it out
Correct.
for us? And just-
Yep, and we'll make sure that everything was done that they made us aware of that they were going to do, certainly. Yep.
Okay. The strategic plan was in your packet. I noted in my report that, we looked at it this spring and made a few changes. I looked through it again now here in August, and I don't have any recommended changes. If you've had a chance to look through it and see anything, I guess that's a discussion that, if you'd like to have that discussion, or if you're comfortable with it, what we'll do is keep it the same, and then we look at it, we review it again in February, I believe. So I didn't see anything that I thought needed changed at this time. No? Okay. And then the other thing that I did spend some time updating was the work plan. We'd said we would look at this approximately quarterly. You can see some of my changes in red.
Stacy, can I interrupt just for a minute and go
Yeah.
back to our work plan, or our
Strategic plan?
before we go on to that? When we look at our strategic plan and we look at goal number 4, discuss a water drainage master plan for Brookings County, I really think we need to put some more thought into this, and I'm not saying ordinances, or because I know we've talked and we've looked at other ones, but I did take, after meeting with Madera Township last night, and they were just swamped with water with this rain event, but that's happening all over the county, but particularly around the city of Brookings. And I did take a look at the chapter of the South Dakota Code that applies to the county as relates to county drainage. And when I look at that, if we're sitting as the drainage board, which is what I think our ordinance says, we're supposed to meet, the drainage board is supposed to meet at least a minimum of every 6 months, and we don't do that. And I know we kind of give a little bit of lip service to drainage issues. And that chapter of the code does allow for a joint powers agreement between a city and a county to look at drainage and to figure out some drainage issues. And drainage is difficult because we don't know the solution. If we knew what the solution was and then could figure out a cost, we could decide whether we'll pay for it or not. But I do know that it's a hard problem, but I don't think we're doing anything right now, and it's in our strategic plan. And I'd like us to at least talk about drainage again and maybe look at what we could do. We've talked about the hydrologist issue before. We've talked about some other things with what's going on with the Joint Jurisdiction Committee. It'd be possible to have joint powers agreement with the city of Brookings to look at drainage issues in the joint jurisdiction area, which the city might or might not, I haven't asked anybody, okay, might be interested in. But maybe some of those things we should be pursuing, at least to see if there are some options that are available to take care of some of these issues. I go to very few meetings that are involved with planning and zoning issues where drainage doesn't come up as being a problem. It's just everything. So what are your thoughts on that? We're not doing what this goal says. I don't think we've made any strides this year.
Well, if you're gonna, get the city to discuss it, it's gonna have to be in that joint county board. Because I don't think they're gonna wanna be involved with where that water goes after they're worried about the city limits and that's about it.
Exactly.
Okay, and so now, obviously, we have to be concerned about it, and if we have that joint jurisdiction, that we have this communication, and they want say in how things are done in that joint jurisdiction, we should also use that ability to address where the water from the city is going into this joint jurisdiction area. So I think that would be the spot to have this conversation.
So Mike and I sit on joint jurisdiction. Would you authorize us to bring that up as an issue and say that maybe we ought to be looking at some of the things that the code allows the city county to do in joint jurisdiction as relates to drainage?
I would say absolutely.
Okay.
In my opinion, you look at the zoning stuff, even in the city, when you try to plat an area, there's drainage involved. And anytime we look at something outside of a development or something that's going to go on in that part, drainage has to be involved. And so if there's not a conversation of how that drainage, how that water coming from an area is handled, then, and then they're also wanting, the city wants to have some input on what we do in this area because of the expansion. Well, they should have some impact of what the drainage is doing too. And so I would say that's absolutely.
Are you okay with that, Larry?
Well, I'm looking back to our board appointments, and a few years ago, I sat on the South Brookings Drainage Advisory. Bob, it's not on our board appointments, but we had city representatives, Madera Township, the county was
What
represented.
happened to that board?
After discussion with the Corps of Engineers on the drainage part of it, basically, we haven't met since then. It was the view of the Corps of Engineers that adding any additional water to the Sioux River was prohibited. So that's where we were at.
This is where I think we need to get, again, state and federal involved in this type of situation also. We always seem to get somebody from the Corps to turn around and tell us we can't do anything, but it doesn't change the problem, just like Madera Township here and the problem with all that flooding. And so I don't know. I mean, we're going to have all these good ideas, possibly maybe doing something, but then we're going to run into this roadblock that you always do, called the Corps of Engineers. And so I don't know if there's a way that we get the conversation going with some of our state representatives and our federal representatives on something like this, but it's going to have, it can't be just us, it's going to have to be a bigger thing if we're going to get anything done.
Right, and we just need to get that started. But are you thinking, Larry, that group should be reconstituted? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I mean, just like Ryan says, basically we spent, I can't remember the dollar amount, it was around
$25,000, I believe.
Right, for
On
a
a
plan
study, on a study, yep.
for the South Brookings drainage, and basically they said it's because of the topography down there, the drop from Brookings to the river is so minute that if that project went forward, it might have a negative effect on the drainage in South Brookings. But
Yeah, they said if we dug a ditch to the Big Sioux River from the city of Brookings, that the water, whenever the Big Sioux River flooded, water would back up into the city of Brookings. It wouldn't go to the river. It would come back into us.
And you have a copy of that report, Bob?
I should have in my records.
Yep.
Would you send me a copy of that and send Mark Richards as Madera Township Supervisor a copy of that? Because I don't know that he's seen that. Because I'll tell you, a ditch is what they're talking about, but it might be that they should have an opportunity to look at that.
Okay.
But could we maybe put Stacy on the agenda for the next, or the one after? It doesn't have to be the next one, because I think that agenda might be out. Just to talk about drainage in the joint jurisdiction area, put that on the agenda when you're working with Council Member Kidweiler to set the agenda.
Ready for a long meeting.
Yeah. But at least it needs to be, maybe we can't find a solution, but we got to talk about the problem.
And we'll need to request that that be put on the agenda as the drainage board meeting, so we meet the state law where we meet twice a year.
Okay.
Typically what we do is you would just you step down as a county commission, convene as the drainage board, and then once you're done with the drainage meeting, then you go back into county commission. That's the way we've been doing it. We've been following state law as close as we can in the past year.
Okay. That's all I had on the strategic plan. Sorry about that, Stacy. You can move on.
So then the next thing I had was the work plan, and as I said, you could see my updates on noted in red. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add, other, as under any of those topics, or if there's any additional new topics that you want, but this is as I looked through, I couldn't think of anything else to add, but this, I guess under Joint Jurisdiction Committee, we could probably add discussion on drainage now as a letter C under number 3.
One thing, Stacy, if I could interrupt, on that 5-year plan and the scheduled public hearing date in September, we originally were not going to do that early because we weren't going to submit any preliminary engineering grants, so there was no need. We wouldn't have had to have it done until the first of the year. However, now with this one that you approved for me to go ahead and apply for, that's why we want to have it then. So just in case there were some questions why the date had been moved or whatever, that's the reason.
Dick, is this a year where we get a bridge inspection report?
He started on it, but we won't get it. It's not due to the state till Halloween, and we usually get it the first meeting in November.
Is that small structures or large?
Large.
Large this year.
Also, the other thing that improves our situation on these box culverts, we've replaced some of these smaller structures. They only have to be inspected every 4 years, so, and they got a lot longer life expectancy. So that's
Anything else on that, on the work plan? Okay. Moving on, I sort of spelled out in my report how, I guess, kind of going back to how I would like to do department head reviews. That's going to start, that process actually needs to start now. The strategic plan says we have that done by the end of October, which kind of followed that kind of loosely in the past, but I think if we set that as a goal and can get there, great. What I have in the packet is the form that we've used in the past. You can see the top section is the department head self-evaluation, which I'm suggesting that each department head does that, and then they turn it into the HR office by September 25th. So we have quite a bit of time here in order for department heads to get that done. Then once we receive those, we'll email those out, that portion, that Section A portion, out to all of the commissioners to take a look at it. Then, however you want to receive this, we'll use this form that was in the packet, and if you want to do it, fill it out electronically, we can email this form to you, and you can make 7 copies and fill each one out, or we can give you paper copies and you can pencil it in. And then those will be due back to the HR office by October 19th. That gives us about a week or so to compile. And what Laura and I will do then was we'll compile all of the comments, put them onto one form that includes the self-evaluation, all of the comments from the commission, and then that will be the document that is used during the department head review process. My suggestion would be Tuesday, October 30th. Just kind of looking ahead, trying to get that in before the end of October and giving us enough time. There's actually 5 Tuesdays in October, so that's the 5th Tuesday, and there's no commission meeting scheduled that day, so we could get those scheduled. And in this year, with the addition of Kristen out at the BCOAC, we will have 7 reviews to conduct. Any questions or comments on that? Tell me to start over and try again, or do you like that process?
I like this form better than the one we used last year. I'm curious whether the department heads have any comment on the process.
I guess I was probably the most vocal at our department heads meeting, but, for my department, there's a lot of variables, and I can see the value of this if it's giving you guys, the commission, the information you want. But if I was a smaller department where I really have no variables, nothing that can be adjusted, or from a management standpoint, I just don't, I think it's a little overkill myself. But for like me, when I'm dealing with millions of dollars and I've got a lot of management decisions to make and things I've got to do on my own, if you're getting good feedback from that, then I'm for it. If you're still at loss of, well, I don't know really what Dick is doing, I guess it's okay, then I would go to a different process. Maybe sit down with an interview type of thing, maybe issues. That's my own opinion. But
Anybody else have comment?
It keeps me, if nothing else, it makes me look at the strategic plan once a year and make sure my department or sections are trying to align with what the commission directs us to do once a year.
Everybody okay with the process then? Are we good? Okay.
And how about that October 30th? Does that work if we can get that on everyone's calendar now? I'll touch base with Commissioner Miller.
And
We'd
what
probably
you're
start-
saying is
start
cross
that-
off the whole day for...
I don't, I hope you don't need the whole day. If you start at, I'd say maybe start at 9 o'clock, 8:30 or 9. I guess that's up to you. And, sometimes I think we've scheduled half hour. I don't know if I think that's probably, I think that's plenty. So 7, start at 8:30, you should be done by 11 noon, 12:30 probably.
That date work for everybody?
I'll touch base with Stephanie too. But make sure that works for her. Other than that, I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Steve, State's Attorney's report.
The one matter that I wanted to bring up with the commission was a proposed use and restoration haul roads agreement for the wind tower project. And we've been working on a draft of that agreement to provide for the restoration, the terms of use during the hauling, and a number of those roads have been identified. We had a meeting with the representative, Jesse Bermel, on about July 11th, and since that date, then I've been working on trying to develop an agreement, because there's going to be some substantial hauling, so forth. Dick, I think, is familiar with the project as well and probably has more facts than I do. My focus was on trying to develop an appropriate agreement that would give us the most protection that we could obtain. And so we've kind of expanded the standard South Dakota DOT haul use agreement to provide some more detail, I think, which provides us, an additional clarity in what our expectations are of each party. One of the issues, though, I wanted to bring up with the commission was, whether it would be appropriate to contemplate some sort of a fee for the use of those roads during the project. The agreement provides that the roads would be inspected before construction and use, and both by by our highway superintendent and by them, documented as to the condition prior. The roads, some of the roads might be improved prior to hauling. The roads would be, used for hauling purposes and then restored to the pre-construction condition after it's over. So that's the expectation, is that we would maintain the status quo of the quality, but we're going to, of course, spend quite a bit of time administering the project or supervising, inspecting, and so forth. And it seemed that there might, be some costs associated with that are not reflected in just the restoration and return of the roads into condition. So a question, I guess, for discussion would be whether we should impose a fee for each road, to kind of cover the administrative costs of the use of the road. There may be some improvements to roads as a result of this project, where the roads are left in the improved condition made by the Coyote Wind, which is doing the construction project. So there may be some additional advantages to the county at the conclusion, but there would certainly be some costs associated with this project. And I'm sure Dick will spend some time, with them out in the field, and be quite a bit of work involved in that. It would be fair to contemplate a fee, I would think, and so I built one into the agreement. One final comment would be that the standard South Dakota DOT agreement really is, is an agreement where the state is seeking permission to use a county road or a city road or whatever, and so their agreements aren't that detailed. This is for our protection, so we've spent the time to kind of develop those protections in more detail in our proposed agreement, and they are looking for this agreement any day now, but I would like to see some input from the commissioners as to a fee, and I've suggested $1,500 per road, and that probably is just a starting point for discussion. So.
One thing, in addition to Steve's comments, which thanks again for all your work, at this project, with some of the size of the equipment they'll be bringing in, they'll be modifying certain radiuses and intersections and stuff a little more significant than just trucks driving over. But they also, in this agreement, they have to get approval through me before they make any of these, and also at the end of the project, I have the say of whether it stays or goes. And so it could very well be a good improvement to our system at no cost to us. A fee, I guess I don't know of anybody that's charged one in the past, but it certainly has merit, because there is tons of stuff that get thrown in with this. And, this is a $1 billion-some project. It's pretty small change for these guys to come up with some money if you decide that'd be a good thing to incorporate.
If I may, I have got no problem with charging this company, but if you're going to charge this company, we'll probably need to change the zoning ordinance and require it for any construction, whether it's and then are you going to get to the point where If a farmer's got 10 tractor trailers that you're charging him to use county roads because they're using the tractor trailer continuously 365 days, you know, it's almost like I don't know, almost like a tax on just because the company's big versus.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't interpret it as a tax or a penalty. As Steve points out in the agreement, it's for, we're anticipating damage to our roads. I mean, you figure 124,000 tons moving across a bridge and a gravel road. Then you take, the old towers used to have like roughly 40 cement trucks to fill their base. Now it's going to be like 125 times 50. This is of a magnitude of nothing we've ever seen. A haul road agreement is not for your routine, like going to a dairy and delivering feed or going to the hog confinements or any of these others. They've got additional traffic that puts burden on the road, but that's part of maintaining the road. This is above and beyond. I mean, this is big time. This isn't, they could go down our gravel road and turn it upside down every day. And what do you do? And they got their T's crossed and their I's dotted, believe me. Steve knows everything we turn in goes to their attorneys, and they've been to more rodeos than this one. So it's very beneficial for us to treat these extreme examples as just that. I don't want to get to where we start every time somebody wants to haul 3 loads of grain to the elevator in Sinai that he's got to get a load agreement to go. We already give those people, we design our roads for that, to handle that stuff. This is above and beyond. This is big time.
But in our zoning ordinance, we require each township to go into a road agreement with anyone that gets a conditional use permit for anything that's above and beyond. So, and we have to be careful because they could interpret whatever the county does and start doing it on our local citizens that has a ramification that we don't even know about now. That's fine. I'll drop the subject, but I'm just letting you know we prefer to treat everyone the same regardless of their income.
But that's also why I think we really need to separate our townships from the county. So many times we're giving advice to townships that we have no business giving opinions and suggestions to. That's their doing, and they're going to work out an agreement all on their own. A good example, and Larry was witness to this, in the first wind tower project, the townships, if they had a pothole, they wanted 6.5 miles of 10 inches of gravel added to that road because they destroyed it. We look at it a little more realistically, and we'll inspect it and do the best we can to prevent it. On our tar roads, they could drive them to death and they could look perfectly normal. The next spring, it might be just totally destroyed. But we're trying to protect our asset. They should be trying to protect theirs. So if it's through zoning that they feel is the best way with conditional use, if they're in fear of their infrastructure being damaged, then by all means take precautions to protect it, just like I'm doing for our system. I could care less about. I try to help them if I can, but I'm not Mr. Obvious when it comes to giving.
You answered one of my questions. It was if this included the township roads. The township do need to enter in agreements with these companies themselves because we don't need to make decisions on their roads.
Right. One size doesn't fit all.
Right. I think Steve's suggesting for a length of one road, the $1,500 to cover the administrative cost. The other would be in the haul road agreement, if damages are incurred, they will be replacing the road back to previous condition, which it needs to be done, of course. The other question I had was, in previous Buffalo Ridge 1 and 2, will we be doing over dimension, overweight permits per load of I'm not saying cement trucks, if they're legal loads, are legal loads, but the tower loads, the hay equipment loads, if they're being hauled in, are we gonna charge those permits just like the state does to travel down the interstate, an overweight permit or an over-dimension load?
Certainly, what would be the best in our interest would be to get an umbrella one that it would cover all that. Yeah, because then you're not messing with it administratively on per load. Some of these will be multiple loads per day. Unbelievable. It'll be $10,000 to $12,000 within a short period of time. Yeah, not to mention time consuming, and they're calling all hours of the night and day to get these permits. So,
And that was the issue before, I believe, with Buffalo Ridge 2, numerous loads. I mean, it generated us, but it was like $30,000 to $40,000. But I mean, you had, just like Dick said, they're wanting to bring equipment in on the weekends, any time of the day. Permits had to be issued. We basically ponied off what their state permit was, duplicated it onto our county permit, and issued it to them.
So Larry, I think you read the haul agreement. Was there anything else in the agreement itself that you had some issues with, or?
No, I did not read it front to back, but those
Okay.
were just some issues that we had had before. And just like Dick said, the very first wind tower project we did in Brookings County, the county went out and represented the townships. Well, after the project was done, the county's representation didn't agree with the township representation, so we got stuck in the middle trying to work with the companies, and we made sure everybody was happy. But the company was a good company, came back, fixed the roads that were damaged.
And this agreement, because I can't remember, I looked at it a week ago, does it only applies to the county roads? It does not apply to the township roads? Does it have a provision in there that says that everybody acknowledges that this does not govern any township roads, and they have to deal directly with the townships on that?
No, there is not a provision as to that.
I wonder if we would want to add that in just to make that clear.
Clarification, yeah.
And then, how many county roads are we talking about? If we're talking about a $1,500 fee, how many county roads are there?
16 lengths of road.
So we'd take the 1,500 times 16 to figure out, okay?
Is that 16 miles?
I think it's just the one road, 482. That's ours, 2 miles of gravel from Highway 30 down to 8.
I'm just curious, if we assess this fee, what are we talking about dollar-wise? Because if we're just adding this in for a little tiny $3,000 amount, maybe it's not worth that, but, or maybe we need to, if it's a lot of administrative time and cost, then maybe it needs to be something different than that. So how many roads are we, county roads? And did I understand this right? The haul agreement applies from the $1,500 fee applies from the start of that road to the end of that road for where they'll be traveling, and it's one fee for the whole stretch.
Well, the fee provision would be for each county road used. And so I just went down the list here, and we've got 4 county roads identified. And I guess, Dick, you've got Exhibit A there. You can clarify that for us, maybe.
See like 482 is our Highway 27. And then these, like 207th Street and 205th Street, between the 2 avenues, that's actually township jurisdiction there. And then same way up above on the streets, those are not ours.
Okay.
Let me verify that, but when I looked through the list, that's what I seen was just 482. There will be, with permits, like Larry mentioned, when they bring in that big stuff, they'll be using other roads, but it'll be like a one-time thing, delivering the big turbines or something like that. And that'll be handled with that permitting process and cost involved.
Right.
So you're saying there'd be one $1,500 fee for 482?
So again, that's an arbitrary figure as a placeholder for discussion purposes.
And I think you based that, did you tell me, on a model out of Minnehaha County?
Yes, and it was basically another hall use
What'd they
road
charge?
agreement. Well, I mean, it was the same amount, $1,500. And it was per road, so I just looked at the roads that were involved and saw 16 stretches of road.
What are your thoughts?
So who's going to be inspecting them? You?
Is that?
Who's going to be inspecting the roads?
They will have a team of engineers with the equipment, and it'll be myself and probably Jeff, the foreman, also going out, and we'll all see the same thing. It'll all be videotaped, and then when you get done, the same process will take place. So that's how they usually do it. Everybody's on the same page and doing the same thing.
Is this fee standard across any other agreements in any other counties, or are we breaking new ground here?
I can't say for sure. I haven't researched that. That would be maybe a little challenging to find out if others are doing that. It's probably fairly unique, I guess. Probably only locally. I would say across the country, I would expect most jurisdictions would contemplate some sort of administrative fee related to all of the time required to kind of administer a project this big.
We have any other examples outside of this type that would be beneficial to understand that we charge fees for anything extra?
Well, I think, you just look at even, try to get a building permit or something from, there's a $50 fee, or there's a building permit fee or something. Part of that fee is for the inspector or the appraiser to go out and take a look at it. And so I understand where you're coming from, but I've seen this before in different things, and it's not something when I have to pay it, I'm not real happy about it. It's like, okay, I paid for this, now I got to pay for somebody to go inspect it, and it's like, boy, that just seemed like, them trying to get a little more money out of me type of thing. And personally, I don't like that. And so I'm sitting here going, well, because they're a larger thing and they can pay the extra fee, is that something Dick does on a regular basis? Does he go inspect roads? Like we just asked him to go inspect a culvert. So do we charge the townships an extra $100 for Dick to go inspect the culvert and stuff like that? And we don't. We that's part of his job. That's what we ask him to do. It's under his thing. And so is this under his there, or is this something over and above that he would not normally do that we have we feel is justified? And I struggle it when I personally have to do it, pay it. I struggle it, so I'm struggling making even a $1 billion corporation do it. Yeah, it's only $1,000, but that's not the point.
One thing to remember too is that these bigger companies, they certainly are protecting their interests to an unfair advantage, because we can't compete with what they can handle themselves. So I don't think it's an unnecessary fee or a tax we're charging them with. We're just kind of playing by the same rules. Because they'll come in with their team of engineers and their attorneys that wrote up the thing. They offered, all we had to do is take their agreement and sign it and say that's okay, and it would have been a done deal. But we got to protect our interests too, and there's some of that really needs that extra little flavor to it that is just personal for us. So if that helps answer, I don't know.
So Larry, are you fee or no fee?
It's one of those deals. It depends on the company. If you're working with them and they're good to work with, the haul road agreement, they're going to go above and beyond to make sure that the traveling public's dealt with and they do a good job. Or you get a company in, if you start nickel and diming them, like Ryan says, just trying to get a little more, maybe they'd be a little more hesitant. I don't know. It's a small amount, in my opinion. If we're going to do for the overweight and over width, all those permits, I think we recoup what wages would be that Dick or Jeff would have extra in those permits.
So you're saying don't do it?
Not per section, no. Just make sure we got the haul road agreement and if we're going to do each load that's over dimension and overweight, do those.
Mike, where are you at?
I don't like getting into a whole bunch of extra fees. Administratively, we also have to spend time administrating those types of things, and this is not a large amount of money. Obviously, if there's time involved on the staff's part, $1,500 doesn't go very far. This seems more like just a little bit more of a penalty along the line. I don't know that we're going to spend extra hours in the day doing this. It's part of what we do anyway, and this is just a project we have to schedule our time for, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I don't like getting into penalizing and more regulation and more expense, even though it's not a lot of expense. It's pittance these companies, but if it's not a standard practice, and there are other counties that are doing or not doing it, and apparently we don't know that, I don't like starting out with extra fees.
Okay, so I think no fee. Did you need anything else from us on that to move it forward?
No, I just status-wise, I'll update the agreement with the minor changes and submit this to them. I know they're anxious to receive it, and then I'll keep you advised and come back to the commission for approval.
Okay, great. Anything else for your report? Thank you. We'll move on to commission reports. Commissioner Jensen.
I believe I attended the parades in White, Bruce, and Aurora representing the commission, and it was kind of fun to go do that. I guess I had time. Out at the Achievement Days, Commissioner Pierce and myself judged the photography contest. There was not a lot of photos, but it was kind of fun to do and interact with the kids. And that evening, went out and did took tickets at the pork feed. Good conversation with some residents. There's comments on how nice it was set up inside the Swiftel and how open it was, and they really appreciated it. Some of the displays out there, were able to see them while they were attending the pork feed. Also, some community comments. The overlay project north of Volga, they were really pleased with their new road up there. It's called super highway they had, and also some residents south of White were pleased with the improvements on the bridge south of White. Also received a couple nuisance complaints, which I forwarded to Bob's office. And one other thing I had, and I'm not sure, questions from township supervisors. We're wondering if there was a possibility of a disaster being declared and recouping some of their costs from the flood damage. I don't know if Bob or Dick could answer.
You know, we looked into it, and there just wasn't enough damage to include, like with the city of Brookings. What you have to do is each incident has to be like $140,000, but then there has to be a $1.2 million overall county or area and threshold. And working with the state of South Dakota, there was the numbers just weren't adding up.
Right. They were referencing in Minnesota, I believe they declared over there, and I told them the same thing, Bob. There wasn't enough countywide damages to warrant it. So I believe that's all I have.
Commissioner Krogman?
Okay, on the 24th, there was a meeting over at the OAC there with Game Fish and Parks and Kristen, and I stopped in and talked with them quickly and thanked Game Fish and Parks for their partnership, and their discussion was the use of that grant that we get from them, and how we can continue to use that and take advantage of the money that is there to get reimbursed. And so we kind of got all on the same page there. Jordan from Pier was there. Scott Simpson from Pier was here. So had good conversation. There's a strong willingness for them for them to want us to use those funds. Obviously, they have some guidelines and stuff that they have to have there, but they're there for us and they want us to use them. So I think that meeting went well, and Kristen kind of has a pretty clear picture of what she can do and what she needs to do to submit those bills and different things like that there. So hopefully that will turn out good. The 25th, we had a beta meeting. Just went over numbers and ridership and different things like that. Then met with Stacy on the 27th. We discussed, our meeting was for, meeting with the city councils or the city commissions of our county cities and see what their planning process is. And after we kind of sat down and started talking about it, we were just kind of like, what's the conversation going to look like? And what are we going to ask them? And what are we going to see what their plans are and see if they've done stuff? And what ends up happening is, I can envision is they're going to turn around and say, well, we're not doing this. Will you help us? Or we're not doing this. Will you help us? And then we turn around and now Bob Hill is planning a 5-year plan for a city of somebody, and it's all of a sudden our resources, I would say our manpower ends up being added on to, or that kind of thing. Or it's like, well, you're asking us, why are you here? Are you willing to give us money? Or it's just almost going to look like we're out there saying, hey, we've got this help, you use it. And if they do, then all of a sudden we've got our department heads and our staff working on projects that aren't necessarily our responsibility. So we haven't, I don't know, we just kind of came to the conclusion that we should discuss this with you guys further and see what we do want to accomplish. I want to have the conversation with them about expansion and what their plans are as a community, and but I don't want to be the leader of it to where we end up doing the job type of thing. Stacy, I don't know if you can add some of that. But
that was the gist of it. I mean, how do you go to these meetings and say, we want to be at the table and have these discussions and be a part of the conversation? But we kept coming back to the request for potential funding that, what we're afraid that would take kind of center stage over what our true purpose for being there would be.
So, I like the idea of having the conversation, but should we be invited to that conversation, or should we say we want to be there and we're going to force our way into the door type of thing? So I don't know. I guess we should discuss that sometime here on a work session, or how we want to do that, because I know it's in our work session thing, and maybe we decide how we want to go further. It was, I want to understand their planning process, that we need to work just like our joint jurisdiction between City of Brookings and Brookings County, but we force the issue on the cities if they're not ready, and what does that mean for us? So anyway, that's kind of where we came up with that. So something to think about when we talk about that work there, or if somebody else has another idea how to move forward on that. But that was our meeting. Then on the 30th, they had the hospital board meeting. We had our first update from their investment group, and that has gone well. It's always good when the stock market goes up, so that making money, but as of right now, that was a good move for them to get into that realm, and they're making a lot more money than they were last time basis. Almost 3 times what they made a full year last year. But that can always change, in a downturn too. So, but got an update on that, and then had another meeting yesterday with Beta. Still working on trying to find spots, potential buildings, land, discussion of even, our spot with at our highway department area there of, is there a spot to build there or something? So trying to brainstorm on different ideas, because there is potential funding that could be available for a new expansion. But we're going to be meeting with a consultant, and then also the person, the engineering group that built the one in Spearfish. There's a really nice public transit building that they built there, and they were able to get grant money for it. And so we're going to consult with that engineering group and try to get some cost estimates of building new, what's available for existing, or different things like that. So,
Are they still looking at doing that in conjunction with the school district, or?
that conversation has kind of stopped with the school district. I'm not sure if that'll resurface. Again, I know both. I've been in touch with the school district. Both are having issues trying to find a place. You're looking at trying to find minimum of 5 acres. If you're putting 2 people on it, you're probably looking at 8 to 10 acres. It'd be great for the efficiencies and the grant process to be able to have both, but it's just hard to find a piece of property, especially in the city limits. And then now you're thinking about going out in the county, and that's a whole nother can of worms and stuff, and what's available and can you build in the county. So, it's finding a piece of property, I think, is both the first issue for school and for Beta both. So, anyway, we had that meeting, and so we're going to continue to work on that through Beta and stuff too. I'll keep you informed. But that's it.
Commissioner Bartley.
Okay. On the 25th, I happened to be in the building when the emergency drill took place, so I was escorted to the basement, and it seemed like it was a fine drill, and everybody survived, obviously, the drill. It's nice to know that we do those types of things on a regular basis so that everybody knows what's happening. And I certainly didn't, but it was kind of interesting for me. On the 26th, with the joint city and county picnic, safety picnic, Bob gave a bunch of information out in his presentation. We were well attended by our people. July 31st, the had a mining subcommittee meeting for the joint jurisdiction area, and I attended that. It was interesting, very cordial. We had some good questions, some good answers, and some direction that we can move in the future here as we continue that subcommittee, or excuse me, the Committee for Joint Jurisdiction Planning. August 1st was a BDC Vision Brookings meeting and social. Interesting to hear the presentations from the different partners in that particular program and get their input on where they see the community going in the future. On the 2nd was the 4-H barbecue, and I participated along with Commissioner Pearson, serving coffee, water, and milk. And put out a lot of water. I spilled a lot of water, but we got through it okay. And it was an interesting concept to have the displays and exhibits in the main hall rather than off into another room. I think a lot of people were able to visit that while they're having their lunch and didn't feel like they were leaving the facility to go somewhere else. So while they had their presentations, people were still enjoying the exhibits, and I think that worked out really well. I'm glad to see that is working for us. It's our first attempt at it. I'm sure there will be a report to us on some bugs that might have happened, but to me it seemed like it went fairly well. That completes my report.
Thank you. I'm going to go back prior to our prior commission meeting, since I wasn't here on the 25th, or whatever our date was. I wanted to talk about the BEDC meeting on July 18th. And BEDC is submitting an application for the Communities of Excellence program, and the application process costs $20,000. And I believe that Vision Brookings has paid that application fee. At this time, there are, I believe, 9 entities, hopefully 10 with us, if you all agree to participate in this process. This is, I've referred to it a couple of times during the last year, where we'd go in and they follow the Baldrige system for analyzing, evaluating your community and trying to determine some things that you can move forward with. And it's a systems approach to a community, not just government, but to the community. And the entities that I think, but I'm not sure I can name all of them, are participating. The city of Brookings is participating. The school district is participating. They've already gone through the Baldrige program, I believe. SDSU is participating. Utilities is participating. The hospital is participating. The city of Volga is participating. And BEDC is still waiting to hear back from Arlington to see if they're going to participate. So when we talk about community, we're not just talking about the city of Brookings. We're talking about more of the county at large. And I want to ask you if we could have a consensus that the county would participate. What we're being asked for a contribution is $1,000 toward that application fee that Vision Brookings paid. And we would contribute $1,000, and hopefully each of the 10 entities would, and then Vision Brookings would pay that remaining $10,000. The first step in the systems approach is the application goes in. There's no guarantee that we will get accepted to the program, but if we do, then there's a year-long process where we participate in meetings and look at different parts of what's going on in the community and things where we can improve. That it's a lot of it's a self-evaluation and then getting feedback. It can last longer than a year. At the end of the year, we could decide we would like to do this additional portion of the project or not do any more of it or whatever. But what I'm asking you today is if the county would be interested in participating in the process and perhaps contributing. We don't have to contribute to participate, but I really would like to see us contribute, if we want to go through the process with everybody, $1,000 toward the cost of the application fee. What are your thoughts? Okay, so Mike said yes, or Brian said yes, Mike said yes. Larry, are you okay with that? Would it be possible, Stacy, for you to reach out to El Houghton? I'm not sure how because we'll have to put that on as an action item eventually to pay the $1,000. Could you just get that? Okay. Can you tell him that? That would be great. Okay. And then as things go along, right now, I was listed in the application as the county liaison person because I'm on the BEDC board. I'm thinking that maybe we'll want that to be somebody else, and maybe it would be Stacy, but I don't know that. Once they get back to us, we can talk about that and see who would be our contact person, but I don't think it necessarily should be me, but that would participate in it. We can discuss that more once they get back to us. On July 20th, we had the E911 meeting, and maybe you talked about this at the last meeting, Mike, but we did approve the budget for E911, and that included adding another staff person so that we're hopefully moving dispatch to having 2 people. And then you saw and approved the joint powers agreement. I attended the Vision Brookings summer reception on August 1st, was at the 4-H barbecue. The photo judging was fun. I'd like to do that again. I enjoyed doing that. And as I walked through the exhibits and was talking to people after we finished serving, and just, the people that I knew, I did say, how do you like this setup and how does this work for you? And I got positive responses from everybody I talked to except for one of our staff members. But everybody else had very positive things to say about it. And walked through the barns, and everything seemed to be okay out there, but I didn't really talk to people. I don't know if anybody else got some feedback on how the setup was for the animal portion, but it looked good, and there were a lot of people out there, and people were moving back and forth between the two areas, so hopefully that all went well. And that would be my report. Any questions? Then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session in accordance with SDCL 1-25-2 subpart 3, consulting with legal counsel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move into executive session.